Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur here, and today, as you know, we don't normally record and release videos on a Friday, but we got a new errata. So of course, in classic TMAT fashion, here we are with a errata review. You can find these, by the way, on the Bolt Action errata page. All of these are completely free. Just click on each of these and they will bring you up whatever the relevant book is. And today we added the Armies of Great Britain errata. The good news is, quick glance over before we jump into this, nothing dramatically earth-shaking. All of the changes make sense, clarifying things that we mostly all know, but maybe weren't written down expressly somewhere. And so to start off with, actually, I'm going to jump over here just to the roll of honor. A huge thank you to the people who are working behind the scenes and are bring things out. If you haven't bought a file from Richard Humble, you really should. The guy does really, really good work. If you don't follow Phil Brewer and Johnny Curran, I believe it is, over on the Tabletop Tommies page, first of all, I'm touched that you follow my channel and you don't follow the Tommies, but you really should just be following the Tommies. These guys are really great. Their advice is really good. In as much as I disagree with them, I can't think of a single case where I have, but in as much as I disagree with them, I understand where they're coming from. So you should totally be giving them a look. If you have a chance to go to an event run by Russell Wright, you really should. His stuff is always awesome. If you see any of these guys giving advice on Facebook, I recognize a number of these names: Jeff, Mike, Ben, Pat, Mark. Their advice is always fantastic. So you should take a look. Jim actually works for Warlord, if I'm not mistaken. I've had a chance to correspond with him a couple of times. Really, really fantastic people helping to make the community better. So just a huge thank you to you guys. You guys are awesome. As we go through these, we're, again, not going to be going over any of the ones that have been covered in a previous errata video. So all the ones in black we will not be touching on today. We're just going to be going over the ones in pink. So hopefully we'll keep this pretty short. But first of all, they've got a clarification just confirming that the morale bonus of an officer who is in reserve only affects the transport that he's mounted on and any unit who is also in the same transport. Okay. And of course, just confirming and writing it down nice and clean that the snap 2 does not work. So if you're coming in from reserve, you can't say, okay, I'm going to give this one to my officer. Officer, of course, needs to, I don't know, test to come on or whatever, and then you snap 2. You can't do that. Okay. But if you are bringing on the transport that has your officer and maybe a couple of other people in it, you could take that thing more likely inexperienced because you are going to get the morale bonus. I don't really know why this was ever really a question, right? Because it's not like, oh, you get the morale bonus if they're within a certain number of inches of the model in your box, right? Or whatever, because they're obviously they're in space, right? They're not really near each other. So I think that's fine. But it is nice to just have that kind of clarified. Similarly with the company commander, if you're in for this is just confirming that the company commander can also take mounts as long as the compulsory people, or whatever, has this sort of stuff. So yeah, again, just trying to make it simple for the whole company commanders and platoon commanders being able to take bicycles, motorcycles, or horses. I personally don't think I'd put bicycles on my commanders personally, but you at least get the option. So again, nice to have that confirmed. Nothing over here in the right-hand column. And as we head down to the rest of this one, we have not seen a change, by the way, in the Lend-Lease program. I don't think it needs a change, but just as a quick heads up, Lend-Lease is still remaining the same as it has been before. And then rulebook FAQs, again, not much here, which is healthy. That's what we want from a game. Here's another one. Can my officers be mounted on a horse if my force includes cavalry units? And they're basically, again, just confirming has to be mandatory squads, right? And then company commander, as long as there's at least one platoon where both the platoon commander and the 2 mandatory squads are riding X, then you're good to go, right? Since it's 1 per force, it's not 1 per platoon. You can't necessarily tie it to a specific platoon, but as long as at least one of the platoons and their associated platoon commander, that's interesting. And an important thing to note, have those mounts, then you can take the character with a mount. Okay, so relatively straightforward again, but nice for them to have that easily clarified so we all have it. And I think that's actually all of them. No. That's right. A little more. So now here's another question. If both sides have units that need to decide to retain their down or ambush order at the end of the turn, or instead return the dice to attempt, who makes the decision first? And that makes sense, right? In this case, just make a roll off, right? Again, it goes back to that early rule on with bolt action where when in doubt, take a dice. Both players choose whether they're 4+ or 3 down, roll the dice, and there you go. Okay. And then, but this one just clarifies, you roll, person makes a decision for one of their units, then they alternate and they go in opposite orders until everybody's finally resolved. Okay. And then it says, if my motorcycle or bicycles or cavalry have the Fieldcraft special rule, do they really ignore rough ground? The answer is yes. So they will treat a forest as if it's open ground. They will treat a ruin as if it's open ground, all of which is fantastic. Okay. And part of the reason why Fieldcraft, in my opinion, is one of the stronger rules this edition. More on that when we do the Fieldcraft video. And then if a vehicle somehow receives the Fanatic special rule, does it make any difference? And the answer is no, because they're down to one model, right? So Fanatic's rule has no effect, which again makes sense. Maybe this will become a thing with Japan. I don't think it will become a thing with Japan, but even if it did, it is one model, and thus, since the Fanatic's special rule requires two or more, you don't have it. So anyway, there you go. There is one situation where vehicles might count, depending on obviously how you count like motorcycles with sidecars. I could see that being a thing, but again, I think the only situation where you have a motorcycle with sidecars situation where there's more than one vehicle, quote unquote, within the unit is an infantry section. So again, they would still have two infantry units, one person driving the motorcycle, one in the sidecar, so you'd still get fanatics. But again, nothing too crazy, relatively straightforward FAQ. All of these decisions make perfect sense. A+ job to the rules team. Very good decisions all around. When looking at this one, I think we only have like 2 or 3 for Germany, which makes sense because, again, the book has been out for a while. This one just clarifies that the Brandenburgers upgrade to SMGs is 3 points each, I believe, because they already have tough fighters, which is, I mean, that makes sense. Very good. Similar to what we've seen with the British book, where when you take SMGs on commandos, it only costs 3 points. The Panzer 17 are getting reined in to also be slow, pitifully slow, which just makes so much sense and helps to remove some of the cheese that we saw in the game from French armies going up against German armies, and one of them having zippy snails and one of them not having zippy snails. So I'm sorry. I know some people really loved this. I have a brother and his son who both play these, and I mean, they still look cool. They're still useful because, I mean, you just use them basically as a turret, right? You plant them somewhere and they provide you with a slightly more durable medium machine gun team effectively. And you still get quite a few shots with it because it's German. So, like on the whole, I think it's fine. But yeah, I understand if people are grieving. I'm not. So it all just makes sense and I'm okay with that. I have nothing against it. I want everything in the game to make sense. And this is one of those things that didn't feel quite right. As we look at the armies of the US, we get a quick update to the fire and maneuver special rule. So it says to reflect this combination of doctrine, armament, and plentiful ammunition, for every 3 men who fire a rifle/carbine when a unit shoots, you may add 1 additional dice to the total shots fired. Now, that does not make a dramatic difference for the American list because we don't have a large number of mounted units, but it means that Filipino scouts who use carbines now get the extra shot. And while I'm not necessarily like the biggest fan of Filipino scouts, as I mentioned in the America video that we just released earlier this week, hey, what do you know that for timing? Filipino scouts do make for a decent assault squad. They're regular, so you have to be careful. You're probably going to lose a lot of men. But it is nice now that when you're skirmishing and winnowing down an enemy, even though you're only firing at 6 inches away, you are getting an extra shot for each of those carbines. It's a small, tiny fix, but it is important for that specific unit. Continuing on to page 36, we have a clarification on the Pathfinder squad. That if at least 1 unit of Pathfinders is not in reserve, aka it is on the table or it's in first wave, though, again, I don't think you'd need to worry too much about stuff if it's a first wave scenario, then any friendly airborne unit in reserve may re-roll failed order tests to come onto the table from reserve. This includes U.S. paratrooper squads, and then we bulked it out to include things like Pathfinder squads so they can even help each other, glider squads and glider machine gun squads, any unit upgraded to airborne. So again, anybody with the subtype is included, which is awesome, and airborne armored jeeps. So there's now a decent reason to try going for those soft skin from every direction that's not the front, sort of jeeps with the machine guns on them. Kind of cool. And the Pathfinders will help you out with that. I think there's a niche build that could be very interesting involving Pathfinders and Airborne for Americans. More on that when we end up doing our So You Like This Kind of Army, Huh? Sort of series, which is slotted to begin in 2026. Page 45, clarification that the snipers have rifles and pistols, which I believe just before I think it was just the like 1 sniper rifle and the pistol, or something like that. But in this case, also just confirming that you can replace your pistol with a submachine gun, 5 points, makes sense. That's on par for everything. Here we've got the 20 millimeter AA guns. I think they were slightly undercosted, so now they've been adjusted. I think the adjustment's fine. Again, it places them on par with the other double light auto cannons that we see in the game that you get with, say, the French, the Greeks, a bunch of other nations like that, some of the minor nations. So there's that. And then a clarification, the thing that I thought was pretty clear from the way that the wording for first wave works, but I'm glad that it's here. Just confirming that if Rangers have the Rangers lead the way rule, that the order of operations, even in a first wave scenario, is you deploy infiltrators, assuming there's infiltration, then Rangers lead the way, and then you move on to resolving turn one. So you do get the benefit of Rangers lead the way, whether you start deployed on the table or in first wave, which is awesome because I thought that's how it always worked. So I'm glad that it's been clarified and it's nice and clean here in ink and we can easily look at it. Great Britain, all of this stuff is new. So we're going to spend the majority of the video probably talking about this. Again, just looking at stationary platform rule, vehicle may not fire if given in advance order. This is the same as it is in other ones. I think it was slightly poorly worded coming over into this one, which, it is what it is. But here we go. Nice and easy. Again, makes sense with everybody else. Change second sentence, the morale bonus of British platoon commanders and company commanders. So again, this clarifies the question people had. It sounded like it might have just been platoon commanders having their morale bonus increased by 1, cover save is not. But this helps to confer that it's not just the commander model, it's the commander and all of the men in their unit. So if you buy it individually, so it's just the platoon commander, morale +1, cover save -1. If you buy the platoon commander with, say, an extra 7 dudes because you took them as like veteran commandos or whatever, and you have like a 7-man, 8-man sort of squad or something crazy like that, still cover save -1, still morale +1. Doesn't matter how many men are in the squad, which is nice. And then again, we got a clarification on what's going on with the LZ signal stuff for, again, the Pathfinder sort of things. Make sure that we include stuff, but it also includes the Tetrarch and the Locust tank, which is kind of fun and exciting, which also makes sense. The Tetrarchs and the Locusts were dropped with airborne troops. I think they were dropped as part of gliders, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, kind of fun. We got a clarification that those guys also get the benefit from being able to reroll failed order tests. There's probably a skew build that centers around those as well. We then end up with the commando subsection that any model can replace the rifle with a submachine gun. Always nice. And how I think commandos should work, because that's kind of what makes them feel like commandos, is everybody's toting around an SMG. Sniper team gets infiltrator, which, tiny oversight, but there it is. We have it back again. And then confirming that you can lose the gun shield and the 25-pounder AT shell if you take the artillery as an airborne unit. And this is to reflect the fact that this is kind of the US 75mm pack howitzer. It's nice to know that that this happens and it does save you points. It's sad because, I don't know, I feel like the 25-pounder AT shell is well worth it. Gun shield is whatever. We'll talk about that when we do the gun shield video, but suffice it to say, I'm inclined not to take the airborne special rule on this thing because of the fact that it loses the 25-pounder AT shell, which I just feel like is really, really powerful. For more on that next week when we look at Great Britain, you'll see why. The Crusader 3 can replace the heavy autocannon with 2 turret-mounted light autocannons, losing open-topped, which is the Crusader AA Mark II. It's fantastic. I'm glad that they confirmed this, that you do get option for the fully enclosed double light autocannon AA mount, which is fantastic. It is unique but powerful in the AA build. Because a lot of anti-aircraft vehicles are open top. This one is not, which is nice. For the armored car, they confirm you can add a Little John, which makes sense. I believe that historically they did sometimes have those on there. And then just confirming that you can upgrade the LMG to an MMG for 5 points on the 30 CWT trucks. That is nice because, and this is something we're going to talk about next week with it, the fact that so many of the machine guns on these transports are LMGs is actually a big deal, because the LMG is not nearly as good pintle mounted on a vehicle as it was in the previous edition, on account of the fact that its shots are halved, and 2 shots is not a lot. The MMG really does make a big difference. So, big fan of those. And then looking at the FAQs, there's not much here. Again, the question is just, in a unit with a mix of models with SMGs and rifles, can all of the additional attacks in close quarters from fixed bayonets come from the models equipped with SMGs? In order to benefit from the tough fighters rule? And the rule is yes, any number of additional attacks can come from a single model. In order to get those rerolls from tough fighters, the Sarge is he's well heard, right? Which means, yeah, you could put a single SMG on a unit, call it just the Sergeant, just the NCO, take a 9-man squad, and the Sergeant will be performing 4 attacks on his own with his submachine gun, if you really wanted to. Which, I mean, on the one hand, you might tell yourself, okay, that doesn't quite feel right. I'm not entirely sure what I think about that. Honestly, I think that's the easiest way to read the rule, and it is technically the way that the rule is worded. But this helps to clarify that, hey, you don't need to split them up. It's not like everybody has to receive one or anything like that. So I appreciate that. It also means we might see some historically grounded kit outs for units where you just have like, the sergeant has his submachine gun, and then you've got a bunch of riflemen, and you've got like a single LMG in there, maybe two or something like that. And people saying, well, at least I'm not hurting myself in close combat because I didn't stack up on SMGs. And I think that's great. I love that. Also, just a clarification, fixed bayonets does in fact work when assaulting vehicles. It's not literally just fixing bayonets. It's the aggressive close quarters attitude. We're going at the enemy. Okay. Which is nice. And then if a commando subsection has a lieutenant, does the +1 morale bonus benefit from the extra +1 from the come on lads rule? And does this presence reduce the cover save of the unit? And the answer is yes. This would be a platoon commander who gives you that extra +1 morale, and the entire commando subsection will end up getting the -1 to their cover save as a unit. Okay, which again, I think is the best way to read that rule. Army special rules state that SMGs for commandos cost +3 points per man, but some units instead state that it's +5 per man, which is right. Both SMGs cost +3 points per man when a man replaces his rifle, but it costs 5 when given to a man that does not have any weapon. So the cost shown in all entries is correct. Love that. Huge fan. There you go. And then if I take 2 or 3 early war motorcycle and sidecars, can I give the command vehicle upgrade to all of them or just one? And it's only to one, right? Even if that slot includes 2 or 3, which again makes sense. Yeah, I hadn't really thought to use early war motorcycles as the platoon commander. I tend to prefer for them to be a little more durable. But interesting question, and glad we got that answered. And then in the SAS Jeep North Africa, the deflate those tires special rule mentions difficult ground is that the same as rough ground. The answer is yes, makes sense. Yeah, so that's great. And then in the Armadillo anti-aircraft vehicles, should the stationary platform special rule only apply to the automatic cannon? The answer is no. The rule applies to the LMG as well to represent the improvised nature of the vehicle. Okay, well, as somebody who likes the Armadillo, I mean, it's a little bit sad, but it does make sense, and so it's fine. And then is the minimum range of the petard mortar on the Churchill AVRE also halved? And note, yes, its range is effectively 36 inches or 21 to 42. So both the direct and indirect fire minimums and maximums are all halved. Okay? Which is going to be the topic of one of our in defensive videos now that I have this officially confirmed. I'd been kicking it down the line because I was so afraid about, oh no, what happens if this gets eroded and the confusion over this thing disagrees. All I got to say is this is one of the best ways to run a heavy howitzer in the game, because a 21-inch minimum range is not bad at all. Not really. And we'll explain why in the video. But being able to do still a 36-inch range punch is still particularly great, right? I mean, in general, 36 inches is all you really need in order to reach out and shellac a unit. And so, honestly, that's all of it. Again, nothing particularly earth-shaking, nothing groundbreaking. All of it makes perfect sense. Look forward to seeing comments down below on what you think about everything. But just once again, a huge thank you to all of the hands who make this possible, who go through, who look over the wording, who check over stuff. Love and appreciate the work you guys are doing for the game. And so, hope that you all have enjoyed this. Let us know what you think down below, and I'll see you next time.